And a lot of ADHD people are stubborn. They're like, I'm not going to apologize. Well, something I would say is in our family, we prioritize relationships. So what do we need to do to repair this? And then the last step is reconnect.
Are you overwhelmed by motherhood and barely keeping your head above water? Are you confused and frustrated by how all the other moms make it look so easy? You can't figure out how to manage the chaos in your mind, your home, or your family. I get you, mama. Parenting with ADHD is hard. Here is your permission slip to let go of the Pinterest-worthy visions of organization and structure fit for everyone else. Let's do life like our brains do life, creatively, lovingly, and with all our might. When we embrace who we are and how our brains work, we can figure out how to live our lives successfully and, in turn, lead our families well. At the end of the day, we just want to be good moms. But, spoiler alert, you are already a great mom. ADHD does not mean you're doomed to be a hot mess, mama. You can rewrite your story from shame spiral to success story. And I'll be right here beside you to cheer you on. Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. Hey there, Successful Mama. It's your friend, Patricia Sung. It's ADHD Awareness Month, and look at me. It only took me 5 years on the podcast to pull together a series for ADHD Awareness Month. Just so you know, it is never too late. Every episode this month will be a new guest expert on the field of ADHD. I am so honored that these powerhouses are here to share with you. So let's dive in with today's guest. On today's podcast, we have Tamara Rosier. She has written one of my favorite books on ADHD. Don't tell anyone else. It's called Your Brain's Not Broken. And I was so excited that she agreed to be on the podcast today. By the time this episode comes out, her next book will also be out, which is called You, Me, and Our ADHD Family. And Tamara is such a treat. She is someone who really understands ADHD because she has it. She has kids that have it, and she has spent her life dedicated to teaching people and coaching people and encouraging us that your brain's not broken and that you are made how you are made. And that doesn't mean we just like abdicate responsibility. No, we're still going to do stuff about it, but we're going to do it with love and compassion and take care of ourselves so that we can live really well with ADHD and show up as the parents that we want to be. Dr. Tamara Rosier, PhD, has been a professor, a college administrator, a leadership consultant, a high school teacher, business owner, and ADHD coach. She is the founder of the ADHD Center of West Michigan, leads a whole team in caring for people with ADHD, and is here to share with us that same spirit of we can make things happen and we can enjoy it along the way. So let's dive in on this conversation that we had about the gamut of dealing with big projects. Like, how do you keep up with overwhelming big projects? So these tactical things, but also the nurturing side of being a mom, and how do we nurture these relationships with our kids and show up as the kind of parent that we want to be? How do we raise kids who are great people and also still want to talk to us when they're 30? I love bringing you moms who are a little bit ahead and have kids who are grown up so that they can show us like there's hope. There's hope for your child. We talk about that today too. There's hope for your child who you look at and you're like, oh my goodness, how are you going to be a human later in life? Like we're falling apart here, people. There's hope. Things get better. And how we can lean into knowing ourselves and taking care of ourselves so that we can have really wonderful families, not just now, but in the future as well. Let's welcome Dr. Tamara Rosier to the show. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. I really love your show.
Thank you. I'm so chuffed. I'm like, ooh, we're here. Because I read your book several years ago, and it's one of my favorites. Don't tell anyone else. When it comes to ADHD, specifically for the way that you speak to the acceptance and loving who you are, but you don't sugarcoat like that these aren't problems. Right. Like the beauty in the balance of accepting who you are and actual real life strategies that you could use.
And being responsible, right?
Yeah, like we're just music to my heart. So the fact that I'm here with you today makes me very excited. I'm holding my book up you can't see me, but I'm holding my book.
And she's talking about Your Brain's Not Broken.
Yes.
The first book.
Your Brain's Not Broken. Because you're going to have a whole pile of books one day.
Oh, I don't know. They're hard to write, my friend. I'm exhausted. But yes.
I have toyed with writing a book and I look at the process and I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of work. Anyone with ADHD who publishes a book, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I'm not trying to brag here, but it is amazing.
It
Not
is.
because I'm a great writer, because it's so stinking hard. And can I just tell a quick story about this?
Yeah, actually, I was like, I'm already abandoning my questions and talking about something different, so we may as well just go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, and you can say, calm it down, Tamara. We don't want to go there. I wrote this last book, You, Me, and Our ADHD Family, when I had long COVID. And for
Ooh.
anyone who's had long COVID, you're dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, dumb. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
dang girl, she be dumb. And I was very, very sick for about 3.5 months.
Ooh.
And I was getting so sick where I was like, is this the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so, and I know there's argument over long COVID, what is it, whatever. It was horrible. And I had to write a book during that time. And someone asked Ari Tuckman one time, Ari, what's your process when you write a book? And Ari Tuckman is a delightful human who doesn't have ADHD. And I love his work. And he's like, well, I just kind of sit down and write. So I imagined him just sitting down, writing. And for me, I'm like, huh. And so I was like, well, Tamara, what's your writing process? I'm like, I have a really gross process. I eat a full meal and then I vomit and then I try to reconstruct the food on a page. And it's kind of like, I go out, I'm reading research, I'm, digesting the research, and then I'm like, how do I order this? And if you have ADHD, sequencing ideas is very difficult. And so thanks for listening to that. That's
It is like, and it's not just that you're taking this very large idea and trying to distill it down into an organized fashion, but it's also a project that takes a very long time to accomplish start to finish. And we tend to be great starters and maybe not the best finishers. So how do you stay on top of these giant projects so that it's not like when you get to like that 75-80% where you're like, I just want to throw in the towel, I'm done.
I'm done.
Through the end?
Yeah. Okay. So this applies to everything I do, right? And so ADHD people, we do get 80% of the way and go, I think that's good enough. And so I happen to be not a good finisher, just like any other ADHD person. You know how when you paint something and then you have to wash the brushes? That's a painful part. Like, I don't want to wash the brushes and put them back in the right place so I can find them the next time. I just want to keep buying expensive brushes time after time. And so what I do is I've learned to take, sounds so corny, but delight in that 20%. And so it's kind of a mind shift that I do. I'm just going to use a stupid task of cleaning paintbrushes, right? I'm forever touching up paint around our house, it seems like, right? And so I'm like, great, look at what I just did. I'm so happy, but it's only 80% of the way there. And I'm feeling great about it. But you know what? I can feel even better when I wash those brushes and put them right in the right spot. Because guess what? Future Tamara, and I talked about this in Your Brain's Not Broken, future Tamara is going to be so proud of me because I did it. And sure enough, I walk out to the garage, I look for the paintbrush in the right spot, and it's there. I go, good job, past Tamara. And I know all this sounds corny, but if you're in my head, it's so motivating to please my future self. I am a people pleaser after all. So that's how I push through the 80%. I'm kind of like, wow, I did a great job. And now I can really land this thing. So going back to the book manuscript, by the way, you only write when you're working with a full service publisher, you kind of write the manuscript to 80%. But even getting there is hard, right? You, Me, and Our ADHD Family is like 230 pages. Okay. But it has more pictures, guys. But I hand it in and I'm like, oh, this absolutely stinks. No one's ever going to read this. I do kind of the ADHD thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. You have trusted editors. And books go through 3 levels of editing. And Revell is my publisher, and they're the ones that clean up and polish. And they make it pretty. And they're like, hey, word choice here. This is a bit clunky. And so, I try to give them a clean manuscript, but it's only 80%. So whenever I hand it in, I'm like, it's okay. I've got a Sherpa to help me the rest of the way. So the other thing I do with the 80-20 thing is I find a Sherpa. You know what Sherpas are, right?
Yes. Well,
They
explain it just in case the person listening doesn't know.
Sherpas live at the base of Mount Everest. And what they do is there's some who help others climb the mountain. And Sherpas don't carry everyone's packs. You have to carry your own stuff, but they know the mountain. And so I use this idea of an executive function Sherpa to help me finish it. And so in the publishing world, those are called editors. But anytime we're working on other projects, I tend to kind of check in with an executive function Sherpa. And you're like, who are those? Well, it could be a neurotypical spouse. I didn't marry a neurotypical spouse, so not him. I have a neurotypical daughter. I check in with her a lot. She's also my office manager, so it's easy to check in with her. I check in with, I have some son-in-laws who I'm like, hey, and it's just a 5-minute conversation. Hey, I'm working on this thing. Here's my next plans for finishing it. What do you think about that? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I have friends who are neurotypical. It's just a 5-minute check-in just to check. And you know this from my first book. The 80% usually includes divergent thinking. That's why it's fun. But then the 20% is usually only convergent. So that's why I check in going, here's how I think I should finish it. Is this how you think you should finish it?
Yeah, I think that I had never thought about the distinction there of when we talk about like innovating and brainstorming and like creating. I mean, very stereotypical statement. Not everybody's like this, but many of us are good at that stuff.
Yep.
And then when it comes to the end, that last 20% is the detail work, the editing, the spell check, the cleaning the brushes, putting them back where they go, all of those little like detail cleanup things. We're like, wah, wah.
That's exactly it. Well, in Your Brain's Not Broken, I talk about the difference between divergent and convergent thinking. And divergent thinking, it can be rigorous for us, but it's our playground. And divergent thinking is when, like, you take one idea and you're just exploring it. You're just putting pieces together, you're rearranging it. There's no right answer. But especially that last 20% is convergent, meaning there's a right answer and you need to find it. And it's boring. Like, there's no really divergent way to clean a paintbrush that's also efficient. Like, I can do some kind of Rube Goldberg kind of thing, but that's not really going to help. So, yeah.
And noting that, like, when you are asking a Sherpa for help, they are not climbing the mountain for you.
Right.
You still got to climb the mountain.
Yep. I still have to do this, but I'm asking people who've gone up the mountain a couple times. And by the way, I watch neurotypical people. Oh, it's so easy for them to do executive functions. It's ridiculous. And sometimes I feel like they're flaunting it. They're not. They're just using their brain. But I'm like, wow, you just really showed off your executive functions. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And then I realize that's just how their brain works. So, yeah.
It's, to me, it's like similar to the feeling of like when I watch little kids run around and they have no shortage of energy. And I'm like, I wish I had that level of energy. It's the same thing. Like, I wish my brain just put paintbrushes away. That would be great. Can you bottle it and sell it? I'm in.
There are some times. So those of us with ADHD, we tend to prefer divergent thinking, right? Divergent thinking, going in many directions, seeing relationships, all that. And it's funny because we can look like geniuses. Like, if we time it right and we're in a meeting and we're like, well, what if this? And people are going, whoa, that's amazing. But if we're doing what if this every 2 seconds in a meeting, we're just annoying. And we need to sit when we're working with others. And this is what I see ADHD people not doing, is know when to like embrace that divergent and know when to calm it down and do the convergent. And there are some times when I'm in a meeting and it's a convergent task that everyone in the meeting has to do. And in my mind, I'm like, cool, I'm going to be quieter and let the people with good executive function skills. I'm still here. I'm still present. I'm still responsible because I'm a grown woman. But I'm like, they're playing to their strength right now. I'm going to let that happen. So I let executive function shine when I'm in the room.
How do you think that you build that skill to be able to recognize when is it time to be like, Jenna, look at this cool idea? And when is it time to be like, ooh, let me pause and survey what's going on here? How do you develop and like strengthen that muscle?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I'm an ADHD coach, and a lot of ADHD coaching works on doing that. I'll be really honest, I became aware of it because I was irritated working with ADHD people who wouldn't get out of divergent. And all of a sudden I had the realization, like, Tamara, that's what you do too.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things I talk with my clients about is anytime you're frustrated with someone, think about how you actually do that trait too. Like maybe you're frustrated because you're doing the same thing. So, but ADHD coaching does help with it. And now that, I wrote a book with that in it, I should probably be more responsible and do it frequently. And remember, we're talking like before 7 p.m. because after 7 p.m., mom's off duty. Not literally. I will still take care of loved ones. I just don't try to pretend I have executive function skills.
Yeah, I'm like, am I running down this hill or am I reining it back in? Nope. Okay. Let me stay on track.
Okay.
Because it's whenever I interview, I'm like, ooh, what about that? Ooh, what about that? And that's like, it's again, same moment where it's like, I could run with this divergent thinking. And sometimes that's where the best conversations come out. And then sometimes I'm like, ooh, but we do have a limited amount of time that we are here.
That is great awareness, self-awareness right there. And you literally, I kind of saw it on your face. You had to go, okay, follow this divergent bunny trail. Or guess what? I had a plan. Convergent. Should I go back to that plan? And that's kind of what ADHD people have to do all the time. Is balance.
Yeah, because when you were saying about when someone's doing something that annoys you, looking at that and seeing like, is that something that I need to look at how I interact with that same skill or situation? Like we were talking before we started recording, whenever somebody has a big reaction to you, or even a little reaction, that's a reflection of their perspective on the situation. It's not a reflection on me, which I'm like, that's why I'm like, okay, well, I wanted to talk about like emotional regulation and self-regulation, all that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to transition here from the two. It's like that moment where you realize that their big reaction is not a reflection of you. When we are then annoyed by somebody else, it's usually a reflection on us. And that's often a place where we can make changes if we are prepared to.
Or a mistake.
Like when I specifically think about like being a mom, and there's things that our kids are doing that are annoying us or frustrating us or feeling overwhelming to us, that's a reflection on me and my experiences that this thing that they're doing, whether it's they're over here, tapping their pen 400 times and I'm like, just the noise, like Medusa Moms comes out, like that's a reflection on me and I'm getting irritated by that stimulus and it's not them, that's on me. So like one of the things I wanted to ask you as a mom whose kids are older and you look back, how did you deal with those things when your kids were younger and life was different, but harder, but in a different way? I feel like all stages of motherhood are hard, but when there's those little things your kids are just driving you bonkers about, how did you step back and not lose your cool on these tiny people?
So
do you have wisdom?
Yep, barely. But so my latest book, You, Me, and Our ADHD Family, talks about just that. So you just did a brilliant kind of summation of the book. The first part of the book is get yourself together. Part 1 is starting with you. Part 2 is ready for the rodeo. Because I think having ADHD in the family is like a little bit like a rodeo. In fact, my first chapter is called Welcome to the Goat Rodeo because it feels like a drunken goat rodeo sometimes. And I start the introduction to the book by confessing a couple things. And so both of my parents had ADHD. They were divorced. No surprise there, right? 2 ADHD 19-year-olds who got married. This isn't rocket science. And both of them, this is hard for me to say out loud because I don't want to be disrespectful, but both of them really failed at parenting and left bad marks. And so I opened the book with that, but then I remembered a specific time and said, I want to do this differently. And I remember being 7 years old going, I want to do this differently. Well, I flash forward to a time when we were all getting ready for this great amusement park. I'm getting everyone in. I get the baby in. I have 2 other kids, and I finally pulled into the parking lot, and I'm exhausted already because I have ADHD. And that was a lot of, just getting people out of the house.
Yes, is a triumph.
And I hear from the back seat, uh-oh, which, is like the mom's, like, I'm sure there was a mom listening who just threw up a little bit in her mouth hearing that, right? Going, uh-oh, because it's never good.
Brace yourself. What's incoming?
Yep. And I said, what? She goes, I forgot my shoes. And I remember crying and I was sad because I felt like I was failing as a mom. And so the whole book kind of comes out of me trying to do it better, wanting so badly to do it better. But I had ADHD. I was tired all the time. Kids take executive function. And I had a shoeless kid in the back seat that now I knew had ADHD too. Like it was all a bit big at that time. And I remember saying, Mommy's not mad. Mommy's not mad as I'm crying. Mommy's not mad. And I wish I could go back. By the way, this kid has read that chapter and she's really an awesome kid now. The shoeless kid turned out great, guys. So have hope.
There's hope. There's hope.
There's so much hope for shoeless kids out there. But she's like, Mommy, why are you sad? I'm like, I'm not sad, honey. I'm just tired and frustrated. And I'm telling you that of a time when I didn't succeed, because there's so many moms out there feeling like they're failing constantly. So I'm going to tell you the big deal of parenting, and it's the number one thing. It's relationships. You can fail at a lot of stupid things, like forgetting to put shoes on your kid. And I mean, technically it was okay for me to assume she had shoes, but you can fail at a ton of those little things, but always make relationships a priority. And so when do the relationships happen? They're happening all the time. And so in the book, I say, it's not surprising that we have problems and conflict. That's predictable. How we resolve the conflicts, that's where the growth happens or can happen. Now, back to my family of origin, there was no resolution. There's a lot of screaming, shaming, all that, but no resolution. So in the book, I really explore how do we resolve? And so, I worked out a way to debrief with my kids. And by the way, this isn't just for parents. This book's for anyone in an ADHD family. And so if you're like me, you have a really dysfunctional family of origin, that's okay. Still read the book because you'll get your boundaries in place and how to respond. If you're a mom just trying to figure it out and you have shoeless kids walking all over the place, it's for you too. But it's really for anyone who has, one person read it who her sister has ADHD, her sister and dad. And she read it, she's like, I feel like I understand how to respond better.
The mom who's listening right now, the three of us here, we are doing this hard work of looking at how things went in your family. And not to say that necessarily was all bad.
Right. Not everyone has that.
Not everyone does. But then looking at your family and being like, how do I do better by my kids?
Yep.
Knowing that my ADHD is in the mix, which means there was probably some up in the tree somewhere. It came from somewhere.
Yep.
And there's a good chance that our kids, if they don't have it, they're in a family of people who do. Exactly. So they're going to be affected by it somehow, by being nearby. And how do we start changing the tides on these? I look at them as generational changes. Is that all the work that you and I and you listening are doing right now is shifting the way that your family deals with the stress of having ADHD in the mix. And every single thing that you are doing matters. On the times where you feel like it's not making any difference, it is. The little things are adding up. You're making progress. The days that are terrible, you can go through this, the resolution and coming together, but everything that you are doing matters. But this is hard work.
As long as you're tending to the relationships. I do a lot of parent coaching, and the parents who've lost their ability to walk with their kids didn't nurture a healthy relationship. And I can't state this enough. I get it. Life is busy. There's all these executive functions to take care of. Oh my gosh, the laundry you have to deal with, right?
It never ends.
It never ends. In the socks, where do socks go? Right?
Mysteries of the world.
In little baby socks, they go everywhere. So all of this is a lot to deal with, but it's the relationship. And so it's not that we don't expect, especially let's just talk about moms to lose their minds and go, for the love, stop tapping your pen. But to come back and go, hey, I apologize. That was on me and I'm not in a good place. So I'm going to put myself in timeout for a few minutes. And I really hope you forgive me for that because I love you and I want a relationship. And you keep talking about relationship. And I'm telling you, and I know this for a fact, when those kids get to be critical ages where they can go out and do whatever they want, if you have that relationship, you still have influence and you have love. And I work with a lot of parents who love their kids, but they have so much anxiety, they don't have a real relationship with their kids. And they're missing out on some beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. So always, always. And when you're a parent, bedtime is like this woven in time for relationships, right? And it's when our ADHD kids kind of unwind anyway, sometimes meltdown. But if we are doing bedtime, we're like, that's where we show we're there. A funny thing that the shoeless kid, I'll just call her a shoeless kid from the story. She's 28 now, but she said to me about a year ago, she goes, Mom, I used to think you had a beautiful singing voice. And she goes, I don't anymore, but it was really comforting when I was little. And it's because I would sing songs to her when she was sleeping or, going to sleep.
Yeah.
To calm.
Yeah.
And it's just a really funny thing. She's like, I just thought you had the most beautiful voice in the world. And if you've ever heard me sing, I don't. It was so comforting. And so it kind of built that relationship. So my kids are 31, 30, 28, and 22. Sorry. And I'm really pleased to say we have strong relationships.
So when we think about you mentioned having that repair time and resolution time when things don't go well because they are going to not go well many times.
Yep.
And bedtime can be a really great connection point. Mm-hmm. What are the other ways that we can, if we're struggling with this connection with our kids, what are some other ways that we can start to sew into that connection point with them and turn this around? If we feel like, oh man, I'm totally failing at this, what can I do today?
Yeah. So here's the thing. You don't have to, it's the process and how you do things in life. It's not taking kid out on a special date. It can be, but it's really just how you live your life. And I'm sorry, I keep referring to my next book, but in You, Me, and Our ADHD Family, it's all about this. Part 2 is all about how do you do these things? In one chapter, I talk about what do you do when feelings get hurt? Because there's big feelings. And when there's ADHD in the family, there's a big feelings around. What do you do to make it okay again? And a lot of ADHD people don't know how to make it right again. And so I teach adults and children how to do 3 things: reach, repair, reconnect. And ADHD people kind of want to skip. And so first of all, reach is, I'm going to reach out to you. Hey, Patricia, what happened between us isn't how I wanted that to go. Can we talk about it? That's a reach. And we teach kids to do the reach. I kind of had a meltdown. Can I talk about it? Right? That's a reach. And we want to teach everyone in the home to do a reach. And we want to teach everyone in the home to understand a reach and not to be a jerk about when someone's reaching. Now it's okay to go, hey, I see you're reaching out. I'm not ready yet. I can be ready tomorrow morning. Is that okay? All right. So we, just because someone reaches, you don't have to accept it immediately. The next part is repair. What do we have to talk about to fix this? Do I need to apologize? And a lot of ADHD people are stubborn. They're like, well, I'm not going to apologize. Well, and something I would say is in our family, we prioritize relationships. So what do we need to do to repair this? And then the last step is reconnect. And reconnect is, now can we spend time back together? Can we be in harmony again? And a lot of families don't do this process. They just go back to reconnecting. Hey, I brought you some ice cream, like a peace offering, and that's going to get the reach and repair done, when really we want to do those 3 purposefully. And so the idea is, as you do that, you're building stronger relationships, right? Yeah. So that's one technique in the book that I talk about. I also talk about how to make decisions together as a family. There's different techniques for that. So, yeah.
So to sum that up, it's not like we have to come up with a 17-step plan and I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to be a different person tomorrow. No, we don't. We don't have to show up differently and be a whole new person tomorrow. The way we can do this is in the little things that are happening.
In how we do things.
And how we do them.
And it's usually around what we do when we screw up. And we teach everyone in the family, it's okay not to be perfect, but we own up to when we're not perfect and we value the relationship.
Have you ever been invited to a party and you realize you weren't going to know many people there. And so then you like dread it all the way going up to the event, or you talk yourself out of it so you don't go, because it's scary to put yourself out there in a situation that, like, what if I don't like them? What if they don't like me? And it feels stressful. Well, I don't want you to feel that way about hanging out in this community, Mama. So I am hosting an open house, and I want you to come and meet all the mamas so that you know what kind of people we are. P.S. We're great. And that you feel comfortable joining in this community. Because if you are thinking about joining Successful Mama meetups or thinking about joining the retreat, I want you to know that these are your people. And what better way to do that than to actually meet the people? So come join us at our open house. We are hosting an open house in Successful Mama meetups on November 6th. And come meet the moms, hang out, see what it's like. You'll get the feel for like, who are these people? What's the vibe? Do I want to hang out with them? Yes, you do. It's going to be so fun. So come hang out with us. So it's totally no charge, free, $99. Come hang out at Successful Mama meetups on November 6th. Our meetings are on Wednesdays. They're at 12:30 Eastern. Go over to my website at patriciasung.com/open house. It's all one word. OPENHOUSE, and sign up for the link so that you get the Zoom link. Remember, this is all virtual, so anybody can come anywhere in the world. See what time it is on your time zone and come join us. For the first 30 minutes. We hang out and get stuff done. So I have help there for like how to plan your week. Or if you just like, I just need to get some stuff done and the body doubling helps, do that. Like, there's no wrong way to show up and do stuff at Successful Mama meetups. Did you get something done? Great. That's what we're here for, okay? So that's the first 30 minutes. And then the second 30 minutes is social time, where we hang out and we make it fun. You actually want to show up to the body doubling because you get to hang out with your friends and meet people who understand how your brain works and you feel at home. So come join us November 6th. Sign up at patriciasung.com/open house. And I can't wait to see your face. And if you are listening to this after November 6th, still go over to that link and see when the next one is. I think I'm going to do this again. I'll see you then. Okay, on to the episode.
Something in the book I talk about, and I just want to mention it here, is overfunctioning and underfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say this because I think there's a lot of moms out there who are overfunctioning for their families. And what overfunctioning means is you're doing more for the person than what's necessary. This is a hard one to navigate because you have ADHD kids and they can look very helpless and frankly just stupid sometimes, right? But okay, I'm picking on the shoeless kid today. When she was in, I think 7th grade, she's like, oh, I wish I knew how to fry an egg, but I don't. And so her sister, who was in 2nd grade or 1st grade, would go, I'll do it for you, but you have to watch me because mom doesn't let me do it alone. She would sit and watch her younger sister prepare a fried egg for her. Now, that's an example of overfunctioning and underfunctioning. A little kid should not have been frying an egg. This was happening when I was at work, by the way. And the underfunctioner was like, well, I can take advantage of this situation. Now, shoeless kid did it on purpose. Not everyone underfunctions on purpose. Sometimes they just do it because they don't want to. And so we want to be careful about overfunctioning and underfunctioning as a mom. So a boundary I have to guide myself is I'm not going to do for other people what they can do for themselves. And when I say this to parents, they're like, oh, well, that sounds mean. How else do I show people I love them? By solving problems in a healthy way, by telling them you love them, by speaking their love language. But when you do things that they can do for themselves, you're allowing them not to develop skills. And I'm even talking about husbands, the ones who open the refrigerator and go, I can't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, let me just do it for you. So just wanted to say that to a couple moms over there. Usually moms don't underfunction, especially the ones listening to this podcast. I'm guessing you care a lot about mothering and you might be overfunctioning.
How do we start to separate out when we are, by we, I mean me, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I've made a lot of strides, but when you are someone who leans towards perfectionism,
yeah,
and yet you don't want to overfunction for your family, how do we start to pull apart? Like, oh, but I really want it done my way. I really want it done this way.
Yes.
It's only going to be good enough if it's executed like this. How do we start to pull it apart and allow ourselves?
Wow, you are nailing the questions today. That is a great
Thank you.
question. And I'm sorry to keep talking about the new book, but you're really like hitting the things I wrote about and the themes.
I'm like, and I haven't even read it yet.
I know.
Who
So,
knew?
and you'll get your copy but one of the themes I wrote about is whenever there's a family issue, we want to classify it in 3 categories. Okay. I assigned animals to the category so you can remember it.
Okay.
So the first category is toxic. And so the animal for that one is a scorpion, right? And you just can't be around a scorpion. It's too dangerous. And I talk about the flat-tailed yellow scorpion, that will kill you and blah, 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 right? That's truly toxic. And so you need to know if this is a toxic situation. Not a lot of families are dealing with truly toxic. They're dealing with sometimes the next category, noxious. And the animal for that is skunk. Skunks are cute little furry things who have a noxious odor. And you don't really want to be around that odor. It's gross, right? But you can work with a noxious situation, right? Like when the skunk sprays, you can be out of there, right? And the last category is peccadillo. And I don't know if you know the word peccadillo, but
I
peccadillo,
don't.
I thought it was a normal word when I wrote it, and people were like, I don't know what that word is. I presented this one time at a conference. They're like, we've never heard this word. And the Spanish people told me I was saying it wrong. I'm like, no, it's a British word. And it means like little sin, like just little dumb things, like leaving cabinet doors open. And the animal for this one is armadillo because it has nothing to do with the animal. It's just people are like, are you talking about the animal? I'm like, no, peccadillo is the little sin. Armadillo is the animal. So I just put those together in my book.
They are
But-
pretty cute though, those little armadillos. I live in Texas, so you'll see
Right.
them walking around like the side of the street.
They are kind of little, cute little
so
armored
cute.
creatures, odd looking things.
They are strange. Weird rodent. You're like, this looks like a kid drew it when they're like, combine 4 animals into one. It looks like that. They're weird, but they're kind of adorable.
Okay. And that's what a peccadillo is. Wow. I wish I had talked to you before I wrote the book. That's a great way to put that. So, so what happens is we have these peccadillos in families. And I wrote a whole chapter about one of my husband's peccadillos. Personally, I think it's the funniest chapter because I was so irritated with him. Now he's written off on this chapter. He's all okay. But here's my husband's peccadillo. He washes his hands at the kitchen sink. Great. I like personal hygiene. Good job, honey. Except the next step drives me nuts. He doesn't reach for a towel. Oh no. He starts shaking his hands and water splashes all around the kitchen. And I'm telling you, back to your perfectionism, I'm like, water doesn't belong on a window.
Yes.
And I'm always drying that window. The stain around window gets weird because he's whipping water on it, right? That's a peccadillo. It's a tiny sin, right? Now, I've done this presentation before, like 500 people, and women will come up like, you shouldn't give up the fight. You should fight him for that. Make sure he uses a towel. I'm like, you guys didn't listen to a darn thing I said. His whole point with understanding it's a peccadillo is that's on me. I really want it done differently. But then I'm like, it's drops of water. It's not acid. It's not melting countertops. It's water. It's a stupid thing. By the way, his other peccadillo that I didn't write about because I just really can't even remain. I'm like, what's a peccadillo? When there's sauces, like he'll scoop like in spinach dip and then use the same chip. This is crazy, guys, in salsa.
And he's mixing the two together.
Right.
But then you get one dip in the other dip.
Exactly. You understand the issue. But here's the thing. I can't elevate peccadillos to a moral issue.
Yeah.
You hear my perfectionism coming out a little bit. So for those of you who are recovering perfectionists or aren't even recovered yet, you have to be able to see that's a peccadillo. And I know that I load the dishwasher correctly, but I am going to allow other peccadillos because I want the dishwasher loaded.
Yes.
And now, if it's a situation like many families, kids will shove everything into it because they don't want to have to wash anything. That's worth a discussion because that's not about perfection. That's like, hey, when you overload this, nothing gets clean.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we have to do it again. You do it again. But that's a problem we can solve. The 2 peccadillos my husband does, I've been married to the guy for a very long time. He's not changing those. And you know what? He is a good husband to me. He's a good father. When I focus on the peccadillos, I take my eyes off the relationship. And so I have to keep a peccadillo a peccadillo. ADHD people don't close cupboard doors. I don't know if you notice that.
It's not one of my finer skills.
Right. And so, I have peccadillos that bother him.
Yeah.
And so I give grace to him for his peccadillos, and I want grace also. So speaking to the perfectionist, where there's perfectionism, there's no grace. And so really start to go back to yourself and go, wait a minute, I am so, and people tell me like, no, but I just can't, it's like, that's on you. That's not on your kids. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, because I think we forget sometimes that like perfectionism comes back to being able to prioritize, which is hard for us. So when we're looking at like, is this a peccadillo or is this like skunk level?
Yeah,
Like
not
we
just
really
that.
got to deal with this problem, but yet it's stinky. Being able to prioritize what matters most here, knowing that that's like, okay, maybe that's not my best skill. So how do I look at my value system and our family value system and see like what matters more here? Is it more important that my dishwasher got loaded, or is
Yep.
it more important that it got loaded the way that I want it to? And for some people,
Funny.
like,
It's funny you're saying this. That's in the book too. And I'm laughing because you haven't even read it yet.
okay,
So
so clearly you're on point with this book. I'm just gonna say.
well, actually, you're doing a great job because we're right on the same level. One of the exercises earlier in the book is, what are your values? And then I ask parents, if they're married, to go, what are the values we're trying to instill in our kids? And it can't be 5. It can be 1 or 2. And then all the others are going to give way. And parents are really mad about this. They're like, I think we should be able to do 5. Because I do a lot of parent coaching and I ask this question. But it's like, we got to focus on 1 or 2. You're going to teach more, but that's
Right.
going to be more through osmosis. You're going to teach 2 intently. And so what are they?
And is that like through the whole like parenting journey, or does it that you have shifting values as they age and
Shifting values as they
okay.
age. But here's what I find. Families, with one family, I did kind of a family crest, which is a very nerdy exercise. I talk about nights and kids can really get into it. I'm like, well, what would go on this family crest? And so everyone has to have some of the same family things, but then you get to add your own unique thing to it. And so a lot of families really do have one family kind of
Theme.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's one value that kind of acts as the umbrella for the other values underneath.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of one family who, kindness. I mean, this family just oozes kindness, right? And it's the umbrella for a lot of other values that are tied to kindness. But I can tell this family has just like, how are we kind people? And they're delightful to work with.
Yeah. And when we remind ourselves, like when we say we want one theme or value, we're not saying that all the other ones are not important.
No, it's saying we can't, you're going to have conflicting values.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I'm thinking of myself. So all my kids are very hard workers. Now I have some kids who are millennials and one's a Z. And one of my kids said to me, she's such a smart aleck. She's like, you know what? You know why I'm so successful as a millennial? I have a work ethic and all I have to do is work. And people are like, oh my goodness, you're blowing it out of the water. And she's like, I'm not doing that special. I'm just working hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. You were raised by a Gen Xer who's like, yeah. By the way, I'm going to confess something. My motto to my kids, I'm not terribly proud of this, but they remind me a lot. I'm a Gen Xer. My motto to my kids was, life's hard, get a helmet. And I'm not terribly proud of this, but you have to know I was a mom who would protect my kids. But if you forgot your violin and I work 30 miles away, I'm not going to come home, run your violin to school. I'm going to ask you to figure out how to fix that problem. And I'm going to work with you. I'm going to scaffold it with you. I'm not going to take responsibility for that problem, though.
Yeah.
It was right by the door. We did all the night prep.
Yes.
So, it's kind of funny because I didn't do that without love. And I want to be clear, I didn't do it without love.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, just figure it out. It was, you have to own this. How do we figure this out together?
Yeah.
But
because
I'm not
even
going to
as
overfunction.
yeah, because even as grownups, like sometimes I forget things.
Yes.
And then I got to figure out what I'm going to do. So this is a life skill that we need to learn.
Exactly.
Hopefully sooner than later. Look, you're not going to remember everything. So
No.
how can we get you the skills to know, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to panic? Are you going to expect somebody else to fix it for you? Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do about this? Because even I, as a grown up, like
Yeah.
the other day, I was heading out to an event and my husband's like, hey, can you take this trash bag out with you on the way out? We like done the fridge clean out where you take all the stinky foods out. And so it's all in a separate bag. He's like, can you take that out? I'm like, yeah, I'll grab it on the way out. Did not remember that trash bag. And I came home and my husband left the trash bag there.
Mm-hmm.
I said I would do it. Like, yes, could he have taken it out? But it was everybody like, ooh,
Yep.
definitely forgot that. But you know what? I'm sure my husband was probably rolling his eyes when he saw the trash bag on the counter. But like, it's okay. I just then took the trash bag out and was like, okay, well, I need to do it differently next time. I should have put it by the door. When I put things by the door, they usually go with me.
Yep.
But it's okay. I don't have to panic. I don't have to profusely apologize about the trash bag.
You're going to
But
fix the problem.
you fix it. But our kids need to learn that skill
Yeah.
when there's low stakes.
There was a wonderful moment in our family. We have a caboose kid who's 7 years younger than the next oldest. And there's one time we were on vacation. Evidently, they couldn't find a beach ball to play with. So they were using her as a ball and throwing her in the pool. And my husband and I were, inside, and all of a sudden this, wet 7-year-old goes stomping past us. And the kids are running after her, grabbing their towels. And one of the kids says, let us try to fix it first. I'm like, great. Because, they were older. I mean, one of them was even in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've eavesdropped like any good mom does. No, just joking. I eavesdropped on the conversation. I was so impressed because as they were talking and problem solving, it came out, the 7-year-old was just feisty mad. And they're like, we didn't know you weren't having fun because you were laughing.
Yeah.
And then 1 second you weren't. We didn't know. And then so the oldest said, could we come up with some kind of sign for you to tell us that you're not having fun? Now, here's the funny part. That 7-year-old had a really bad speech impediment. And yes, it was my fault. She's my last kid. It was too cute. I never corrected it. And so she would say, this is not fun for me. And that was the cue where stop. And we still say it as adults. This is not fun for me. But it came out of this wonderful problem solving moment.
Yeah.
And so when you teach kids to problem solve, they start to do it on their own. Instead of having a conflict where I had to come in and go, you guys are jerks. I wouldn't have said that, but they problem solved and they developed a deeper relationship because of it. And we go around saying, this is not fun for me all the time. Other families who are friends of ours still say it too. This is not fun for me. So.
Okay. I have like 4 million questions I would still want to ask, but I had to pull it together here.
Okay.
So before we do our lightning round, because I'm like, I'm over here furiously scribbling notes and I'm like, oh no, but I got to wrap up. Okay. Before we do our lightning round, where can the moms find you? Tell us about the book. When this airs, it'll have just come out. So tell us about it. And then what else? Like, how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my first book is called Your Brain's Not Broken and available wherever books are sold. And the second book, I'm really geeked about the second book. Again, it hasn't come out yet, so I don't know how it's received yet. Hopefully it's well received, but it's called You, Me, and Our ADHD Family, and is really written to help families learn to love each other better and really cherish each other. You can find out about me at tamararosier.com. I run the ADHD Center of West Michigan, and that's at www.miadhd.com. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, lightning round questions. All you have to do is fill in the blank. You don't have to give any explanation. Just
got it. Love it.
Okay. Number 1, the best thing that I've read or listened to recently is?
I read The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. And I love reading novels. And when I say read, guys, I mean listen to while I'm doing mundane, boring task.
Number 2, my most boring about me fact is?
I'm just kind of like, I have bland music taste. Like, how some people have jazzy. I just have like blah music taste.
Number 3, when I'm having a rough day, my go-to quote, song, poem, book, podcast, activity, whatever is?
Watching funny dog videos. I'm not gonna lie. That's I do tapping, EFT.
Yes.
But sometimes when I just need a little pick me up, I watch funny dog, especially if you can make it the dog talk. It just cracks me up every time.
Number 4, don't tell anyone
oh my gosh, I have a total zoo in my head. So this is a well-kept secret because I talk about it, but I actually make myself laugh. Like in my head, I'm cracking jokes all the time. I'm doing bits in my head, and I don't think it's normal. I think, but in my head, I'm hilarious.
Number 5. If I had a magic fairy wand for one spell, I would.
I would do the ridiculous spell. When someone is just spouting ridiculous, stupid, hateful things, I'd be like, ridiculous. And I'd make them stop.
And last one, number 6. My best piece of advice for mamas with ADHD is.
Okay, I'm going to say 2. Be kind to yourself because you're modeling that for your kids, and always go after building solid relationships.
Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. I just adore your book. And I'm like, I didn't even finish all my questions. And one of the things I wanted to say was thank you for your battery analogy because I use it all the time.
Oh, thank you.
Like when we're monitoring like our energy levels and comparing it to the phone battery percentages, like it comes out of my mouth a lot. And so thank you.
Oh, good.
It is a beautiful picture that I use. But knowing like everyone needs to go read Your Brain is Broken. You need to go read the new book too. Tell me the total one more time.
You, me, and our ADHD family.
Because we need more mom. Like I try not to boss too much because, you know, we don't like being told what to do.
Right.
But I think we all need moms who are a few steps ahead of us to give us the good advice, not the like reminiscent, I forgot all the terrible things that happened advice, but the like true hard stuff that we need to hear. And so that we're able to determine those things that like really matter versus the picadillos that we can let go.
Exactly.
And when we have people like that in our lives, it's so much easier to stay focused on what really matters. So thank you so much for all that you do for us as an ADHD community, but also as moms. I so appreciate it. And I thank you for being here.
Well, I love your podcast. You're doing good work too. So thank you.
For more resources, classes, and community, head over to my website, motherhoodinadhd.com.